A big part of my career has been looking at the therapeutic value of the 12 steps because the 12 steps really have harnessed some powerful psychological forces that creates an amazing change in our life. What is that change? Well, the truth is that the 12 steps are engineered to help us achieve emotional sobriety, to achieve true independence of spirit, to achieve autonomy, to learn how to take care of ourselves. These are things that we don't know. Emotional sobriety really helps us learn how to have a healthy relationship, how to have union with the preservation of our integrity, how to cooperate with integrity. Most of us get lost in our relationships. Most of us do a lot of things we don't want to do. We don't really know how to show up in a good way. Emotional sobriety is about learning to have healthy relationships. What stood out for you, Mary, when you read that letter to?
From this letter, what stood out is that I can be aware that this goes on for me, and being aware for it, I can don't have to fall back into the old habits that took me to depression. I also am curious about the term emotional autonomy. I'm not sure I understand what that is. Perhaps you'll cover that sometime.
Well, just briefly, you see, when I'm autonomous, it means that I'm not letting you control what's going on with me. Is that I'm managing my reaction, not you. So that's what emotional autonomy is. It's another way of saying emotional freedom.
Yes.
Right? So think of it that way.
I
But I
like
like
it.
what you said. See, a big part of emotional sobriety, Mary, and you pointed it out, is that the best way to capture it is that we have to become aware of our habitual way of doing things and responding to things. If we're going to get free of that, see, another way of thinking about it is to become aware of our patterns, right? How our behavior, really does, create certain patterns. And if we study those patterns, we're going to learn what our basic flaw is. That's what Bill Wilson taught us. And I think that that's a very important step, as you see from what we're doing is going through the 12 essential insights. Well, early on, it was so important to be able to discern our emotional dependency. If we're going to be able to get free from it, I have to be aware of it first, and I have to own it first. And that's the paradoxical theory of change. Once I own it, I can change it. You cannot change something by jumping over that step. So
When
thank
I
you.
know better, I do better.
Well, when I become aware, see, oftentimes we say that. Herbs likes to say that a lot, right? But
Yeah.
it's a bit more complicated than that, because if that was the case, all you'd have to do is give person new information. But new information doesn't necessarily create change. Sometimes it does. Sometimes just say, hey, oh, I see how to do that. I'll do it that way. But that's the low-hanging fruit. The fruit that's higher up in the tree, you have to go down. You got to dig in. You got to get to look at what keeps you what keeps that behavior from changing. So we have to explore our resistance to letting it go, is what needs to happen later on. And that Bill addresses that in steps number 6 and 7. And, as we go through the steps, they're all about that, especially 6. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Well, as I mentioned earlier, we're now at that stage where the one, the only Mr. Thom Rutledge is going to be speaking on Snoopy and perfectionism.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Thom.
Hi, Alan. Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Hey, by the way,
I'm just
I talked to
what?
Jan Murray tonight, who interviewed you for her summit on workaholism.
Yeah. Oh God, I
And,
love talking to her.
oh,
Oh,
she said she had such a good time talking to you the other day. And I just finished my interview with her tonight. And, we'll just give a plug in for her summit. And as soon as we get more information on it, we'll post it in.
yeah. She is. I mean, she's one of those people you just recognize. It's like, you know, I've never been at a time where I didn't know her. Um, and and uh, and you know, I've always said people who do, you know, I've done interviews since back in the radio days, and it's like the best interview doesn't ever feel like an interview. It's just a conversation, and
That's
it's
it.
like
Yes,
it
that's
was it
right.
from the beginning. It didn't we
Yes,
didn't even have to find a
yes,
groove
yes.
with it. We just had the
Nice.
conversation,
Yeah,
and neither one of us wanted to end it. We just, you know, could we just keep talking? It's like, so
kept
it was
talking.
wonderful. Well, I'm glad she had a good experience too,
Oh
because
yeah, she
I
did, man.
really
She
did.
really, it meant a lot to her, Tom.
Yeah, I'm excited to be a part of this conference she's doing.
It's wonderful, isn't it? It's great. And it's,
Yeah.
listen, it's a topic you don't hear many people focus on, as workaholism is an issue in itself.
Oh, yeah, when I found out that what they were doing, that was so cool because
Wonderful.
I
Thank you.
definitely have a workaholic background and story, and I had not really had a chance to talk about that much. And I got to, in that interview, got to kind of remind myself and bring people up to speed with what my workaholism was like. And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's and it works perfectly with our topic tonight, because workaholism is you know, totally connected to perfectionism.
Yeah, right on.
It's all in there the same. So um so perfectionism. Um talk about the, you know, when Bill Wilson in his letter says, you know, whenever we find ourselves distressed, when we look closely, we will find. He doesn't say look to see if you find. He says you will find unrealistic expectations. You know, and that's what perfectionism is. It's really the ultimate in unrealistic expectation, because it's the expectation for us to be beyond human capacity. It's like, you know, and I want to make that clear from the beginning how we define that. It's like, um, we can, and you know, I think last time when we were talking about some of this, the Herb and I had some different definitions and different ways of looking at perfectionism. I got a pretty broad definition here. What I'm really I'm talking about more than anything is perfection is a nicer sounding word than self-condemnation, self-hatred, you know, treating yourself like shit, that kind of stuff. But it's not different from that. It's like, I mean, all of this, and we don't all have the same level of it. It can be a longer continuum, but you know, I've said that here on this on our group, and I've said it countless times just throughout my career to groups of people. I say, you know, if you have this voice in your head that basically says, if you made a B, you should have made an A. If you made an A, you should have made an A plus. And if you made an A plus, you should have made it sooner, you know, or they should have invented a new grade for you or something. But whatever it is, it's never enough. And I like to make the distinction. That doesn't mean we never hit something exactly, because I mean, is there such a thing as doing something perfectly? Yeah, I think there is. Um, Mary stuck the landing right after the reading, right? When she came off the balance beam, it was perfect. It's like, but that's not what the expectation of perfectionism is. The expectation of perfectionism is not you're going to do it one time. Congratulations, we're so proud of you. It's just like, okay, what have you done for me lately? You know, it's like, okay, you've done that. Now do it again, and do it again, and do it again. And actually, most people I've talked to who fit into will fall into this kind of thinking will tell you that, you know, one of the reasons sometimes perfectionists resist trying, which I call advanced perfectionism. I'm just not even going to try because I'm going to fail so miserably. But one of the reasons we do that is because a lot of times that character on our committee in there that is in charge of that, this ruling that's coming up with these beyond human capacity expectations, is if I do something really well, then however well I did that, that becomes the minimal expectation for here on. So I never, you know, and the truth is our competence, I'll just visit my PowerPoint space here, you know, we're human beings. So many variables affect our competency in any number of things, whether it be our competency at work, whether it be our competency at speaking at the meeting, whether it be my competency as a husband, as you know, as whatever. It's like my competence of all those goes up and down according to more things than I can count. I can't keep up with that. So the truth is there is no such thing as there is no such thing as a realistic expectation of myself to be always. You know, it's like it's just not going to be. Some days are going to be. Now the good news is I'll just use myself professionally, or Alan, you can chime in with that too. It's like the idea, as you know, as we've moved along in our career, hopefully what happens is our we can only get so incompetent, so our lowest level of competence comes up, and our highest ability goes higher too. But there's still a limit, and the good news is there's actually a limit to always like to tell my clients that there's also a limit to how incompetent I can become. So that's always happy. You know, I always tell people I will not fall asleep and stay asleep. That's for sure. But we we just have to realize that the expectation there is the problem, and the awareness. I wanted to go back to, I made a little note when you said that about what you say, basically awareness is not enough. It's like, I think perfectionism is one of those things because it's kind of too socially acceptable to refer to ourselves as perfectionists, and some people even use it as a point of pride. People use it to compliment other people, and I'm not messing with people's language. I mean, it's you know, I hate it when we get into this stuff and just get too precise with the language, because if you know, there are times where somebody's going to say somebody's a perfectionist, and what they're really probably meaning is they really are very good at what they're doing, and they're going to do an excellent job with it. If that's what they're probably not saying, this person tortures themselves on a daily basis. That's what we know about them. It's like, so we can make room for what different people meaning, but for us, for our purposes, perfectionism is not something to be desired. It is, as you point out in your book. First of all, I love the fact that you very early on in the chapter refer to it as a curse, which it absolutely is. You make the point. I just got through just at the tail end of COVID, so I've got some. I may, if I break into a coughing attack here, I'll hit the mute button. But uh, um, I, I forgot what I was saying. Do you remember what was I just saying, Alan?
Guy, you're saying, I talked about it being a curse.
Oh yeah. The curse, and the thing is that this is. You also said at the chapter, you said, yeah, this is every bit as much of a threat as an emotional dependency. You've talked about previously in the chapter. It's like, and that's, to me, that's really important, because it's basically doing what I've already spoken about, which is taking the nice, you know, shiny cover off of the perfectionism. Is, you know, it's not a positive thing. It's not, and it's not a motivating thing. See, that's a lot of times, that's what we're supposed to believe, and that's what we often believe, that this driven perfectionism, I got to do it just exactly right, is really motivating. You know, maybe, I mean, sometimes we can abuse ourselves into motivating and getting things done. I've done that in my life, but it's at what cost? You know, how much damage am I actually doing to myself if I let that, you know, for me, that should monster kick me down the road while I'm trying to get something done. The truth is, more often than not, perfectionism leads to paralysis, not motivation. it leads to, you know, it's like I can't get it right, so I just kind of freeze. And I think it's important to be able to do that and know that not only is it as threatening as the emotional dependency, it is a dependency. That's the other thing too. We look at that. What is it? Well, it's this conditional. It's this conditional regard for ourselves. It's like, you know, that I've got to be this, and I mean, there's no better example than of those unrealistic expectations that Bill talks about with that. But you know, I've got to be this. These are the conditions. I've got to be this in order to be okay. And you know, part of what we all teach here, where we I think all on the same page believe, is we don't have to be any particular way. And, you know, we it's just, that's not the point. The point is we can strive to you know, I can strive when I'm doing the presentation here, I can strive to say, okay, I think I'm going to try to make sense tonight and put some sentences together that are logical, you know. But it's like there's no absolute way that I have to be. But historically, that's the way I have approached so many things. You know, you know, and I'll use presenting as an example because you know, I've been in this business for over 40 years, and it's like, uh, for most of that, I've been getting in front of people and presenting things, and I love doing that. It's like it's an extension of my entertaining self. I tried to make a living for a while as a magician. It's like not too successful with that, but I've always enjoyed getting up in front of people, doing things, especially to entertain people. But the truth is, something that I enjoy, something I had to face somewhere in the middle of all my career, something I thoroughly enjoyed, something I absolutely wanted to do was making me sick because I would be so nervous. I mean, I would literally be throwing up before every presentation, you know, because I was so nervous, and I had, you know, and I had no history of really screwing things up very much. I usually had good positive responses, but that's another thing about perfectionism. The feedback I got, the reviews I got, the handouts that people filled out to you know, give a review of what I'd done, they were almost always really good. And it's like, the truth is that should have just built my confidence. Uh, but the truth is, and many people, I'm sure many people in this room can identify with this, is, you know, I could have you know, thousands of those positive ones, and then get one that's negative. And where does the spotlight go? Where does my whole focus go? It's like, you know, that's my perfectionism saying I have to do it just right. And in that particular case, I've got to please that one person. You know, it's now I do have to say one of my favorite, maybe my favorite survey review after one of my workshops years ago. I was sitting there going through with the person who had hired me. We were looking through them, and there was a I don't know why I just like this one. The comment from the person was, he's not as funny as he thinks he is. You know, and I, cause I just remember, I just looked at the person who had hired me, and this is a moment of confidence for me, cause I just went like, yeah, I am actually. I'm exactly as funny as I think I am. How the hell? But if you know how much what I actually think of myself, but it it's so they're just I well, let me just jump ahead and say, if anybody shares this with me, let me do something, because the idea that concepts don't help, awareness doesn't help without application. This is how I began to overcome that, and how I basically have changed that in my life and my career. is and I don't know, this is something from beyond me, but it came up, it all happened in my head one day. I was doing a series of workshops, my sort of, if you just imagine a conversation within my head where the wiser parts of me comes in and says, all right, Thom, here's what we're going to do. We got these 3 days of doing this workshop. We're going to present this workshop as if everybody in the audience just really needs to learn what you're going to teach them, just needs it. They really want it. They want to teach it. And you're just going to act, it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. You're just going to act as if that's the case. And had some rules with that, was because one of the things I had found is, and if you're a presenter, you may notice this. If you're very nervous, I've done this here on this, in our thing. If you're nervous, you talk too fast. And the reason I talk too fast is because it's shame. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'm trying to get out of your way. It's like, let me just tell you this real quickly. And I tend to assume everybody knows what I know. So my wiser part said, you're going to talk slowly. If you're saying something important, you're going to repeat it, and you're just going to pretend that you know exactly what you're talking about. It's the old act as if. And he said that part of me said, you're going to do that for 3 days running. He says, and if from there on, beginning with those evaluations from here forward, if the evaluations are good, you no longer what this guy was saying in my head was you no longer have the right to fret and moan before you get up and do this, because the truth is you don't have a history of failing at this. And and what he said to me was, if you begin to get negative responses to this, he didn't say if you get a negative response, but if you begin to get there's some pattern of negative response, then we will consider going back and worrying about this and fretting about it again. But it's not okay. It's basically, it's off limits. It's against the rules to fret about that. If we pass this test over the next 3 days, and it's not okay unless we actually get evidence that we're doing something bad. And as everybody can imagine, by doing those things, by slowing it down, acting with confidence, whether I had it or not, I got the best reviews I'd ever had in any workshop ever. It was like it just, and I had the most fun doing it, because I was more relaxed than ever before. And I'm not saying I've done it perfectly, but that's one of those areas of my life where I had the first experience with overcoming because I wouldn't say I've mastered perfectionism, but I did have the experience of overcoming that perfectionistic trait of mine, and it's been a godsend to me, because I love doing this part of what I do.
Yeah.
So, but you got to put it into action. Couple more things I want to touch on. Then I would just say this. Most of us agree that part of what we do in our recovery is we're working at we want to live from a non-victim stance. We distinguish the victim thinking from non-victim thinking. Victim thinking is, how I am doing is determined by what happens to me. Okay, so if I have a fender bender, then that has the power to ruin my day. If my wife is mad at me, then that has the power to ruin my week, or whatever it is. It's like, but the non-victim thinking is a slight difference in definition, which is how I am doing at any given time is determined by how I respond to what happens, not to what happens. So there is that, that EIO thing I've done a little while back ago, where the I is interpretation. It's like, the interpretation of what has happened is going to determine the more of the emotional response of return of our actual physical response too. But it's going to be how I frame the situation, so that if I have a fender bender, and I decide my interpretation of it is pain in the ass, inconvenience, or I get to be late to work, whatever it happens to be. But if it's not a big negative thing, then I got the shrug, and that's what we're looking for. I often say that the antidote to the perfectionism, and check this with your own perfectionist self or with other people perfectionists. This is true. The antidote to perfectionism is flexibility, and flexibility and apathy. It's like, it's just whatever. Who cares? I mean, the perfectionist cannot handle that part. It's like, I fucked that up entirely. It's like, okay, well, where do you want to go to lunch? It's like, if we go on, it's like because part of that perfectionism is that we basically, whatever it is that tells me I did wrong, I just need to stay there and suffer, because that's what the message of perfectionism is. I just need to suffer for my lack of perfection in my life. And that's a waste of time. That's a waste of my life. That's a waste of energy. So which brings me back to what we've talked about with Nathaniel Brandon, what Roger always brings back to mind for me, which is the first step to change is always acceptance. And what perfectionism does is it makes self-acceptance impossible, because we can never meet that condition. We can never meet those conditions. And self-acceptance, because I want to keep changing from now till the day I drop off the planet. Self-acceptance, being able to do that on a regular basis, is so important to me. So that's the motivation for me to recover from this perfectionism. In my book, Simple Truth, one of the little original nutshells that I have in there just says, this is one of those, Alan, I'm amazed how emotional sobriety esque this is. I wrote it back in 1989. It says, each day practice accepting exactly who you are, and you will never stop changing. Each day practice accepting exactly who you are, and you'll never stop changing. And that's what I want to be able to do. I want to be able to, the perfectionism isn't going to go away any more than my alcoholism does, my should monster, whatever it is. I just want to be able to step around that perfectionistic belief and realize that's not my belief. That's a belief that comes from us. And we can do a whole nother section on where the origin of that one is for me, or where it is for you. But right now, just to think in the present tense, I need to know that what it is, identify it, and step around it, and not give it any power. Not practice that intrapersonal codependent relationship we do with some of these messages inside. We let them be in charge of whatever you think of me determines how I feel about myself. It's like, no, it's what you were talking about autonomy, Alan. It's like, no, I'm in charge. I'm the one. I'm the one that decides how I'm going to interpret this. I'm the one that's going to decide how I feel about myself in this situation. So I think if I had something really clever to say, I would say it, but I don't. So I'll accept that and realize I've not done that perfectly, and thanks, appreciate it.
Well, you've used up all your cleverness, because you sure shared a lot of very, very, I think, helpful perspectives, Thom.
Thanks. Used up
It
my
is a
cleverness.
curse.
I think I
There's
did.
no question it's a curse, man. I mean, I've
Mm.
seen it literally destroy people. It's to
Oh,
me, it's oftentimes an unidentified source of suicide. For a lot.
that's what I was gonna say. It's a killer. It'll
Sure.
kill you, man. It's like, absolute, no exaggeration.
I had a very close relationship with this young man. Was a good friend of mine and a colleague. And if you looked at this guy, I mean, he looked like he was or sculptured out of a piece of marble, like he was a Greek god,
Hmm.
Greek goddess, with
Hmm.
this body of Adonis, right? I mean, I would die for a body like that, right? If I looked like that. Well,
Hmm.
he had this one little thing on his pec muscle that was driving him crazy. And when he looked at his body, all he could see was that deformity.
Magnified. Yeah.
It magnified. I mean, we call it what, body dysmorphia, right? Is the formal
Yeah.
diagnosis
Yeah.
we had. Well, it drove him so crazy that he went and sought out, first of all, did a ton of research to find out the best plastic surgeon
Hmm.
and found this guy in Orange County and went to see him and to have this thing fixed, right?
Hmm.
And so he went through the surgery, finished it, and for him, it got worse. Now he looked at it, and when people saw the pictures, first of all, when they saw the before pictures, they didn't see a problem. When they saw the after pictures, they didn't see a problem. But in this young man's mind, it was devastating. He
Yeah.
believed no one could love him with that deformity in his body.
Yeah.
I
And he's
mean,
the only one who would call it a deformity. It's
the
like,
only
yeah.
one. I mean, the
Yeah.
women were
Yeah.
lined up to punch this guy's dance ticket. I mean,
Mhm.
I've only had that many women interested to me in my fantasies. I've never had it in
Mhm.
reality. We had it in reality, right? I mean, it was unbelievable. But the tragedy of this is that sent him into such a deep depression. He went to treatment for 2 weeks. It still was intractable and comes out, and the guy he hung himself down in his
Mm.
laundry room. And listen to this. He went down and hang himself. First belt that he hung himself with broke.
Wow.
He had to go back upstairs and get a second belt. Now, do you
That's
think
just
God might have
determined.
been trying to talk to him in between
Hmm.
belt one and belt two?
Hmm.
Couldn't do it, man. He
Well,
believed that his life was over.
just to honor him, I don't know if you remember, but I know him too, and I didn't know him as nearly like you did, but such a brilliant and wonderful and kind person. Just so I just I just like to, just since we're talking about him, just my heart goes out to him because it's like, and like you and I talked about it. How we just give us a moment, give us a moment. I remember we had a conversation like that. Just give either one of us a moment with him before that happens, or between the belts. Let us try to do something. It's just a desperate feeling to realize just what a waste that is, because he's a wonderful person, and
Oh, God.
and I'm, from what I gather, a very amazing clinician.
There is a tendency, because of perfectionism, is that we focus on who we're not rather than who we are.
Yep.
That's what perfectionism does, is it changes what we look at. And now all the
Hmm.
things that were not stand out because those are the things, if they were gone, we'd be perfect.
Yeah.
So they really come into focus, or they get pushed in the foreground of our
Hmm.
consciousness.
Hmm. Yeah.
See, I was thinking that when you were talking, it's interesting because how perfectionism fits into this emotional dependency stuff is we are dependent on looking a certain way, being a certain way to be okay. And see, so the
Hmm.
dependency attaches itself to perfectionism.
Yeah.
And that's how this stuff is so intimately related to our basic flaw, which is I'm okay if.
Hmm. Yeah.
So great
Well,
share.
one of the things I've, having worked with eating disorders for so many years and stuff, that's one of the places where I really got in touch with how much we have to focus on perfectionism, because one of the things I would get to with everybody in our groups with eating disorder, I'd get to that everybody hated and openly fought me about this, is when I would tell them, you cannot recover from your eating disorder without recovering from perfectionism. And it's like, because these people, so many of them would hang on to that with everything they had. And it was like, and just helping people get to the place where they could admit powerlessness over that perfectionism is so difficult. It's hard work, but when you can do it, it makes all the difference. You can relax.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Did an outstanding job tonight. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, Tom Potash, why don't you join us and see if you want to add anything to the discussion tonight? And then we might have a few minutes to open this up to a few shares.
Yeah, I'll be brief because I was a little busy behind the scenes here. But one thing which stood out for me, Tom, what you shared was that I think you said if you do a good job, or if you'll have a minimal expectation from here on out, right? Like you set your
Rose
base
up, yeah.
Yeah, you set your baseline of like, oh, I'm competent at this, or good, or good or better.
Good at it, yeah.
Right. And I had a lit professor who said, don't prove yourself competent at anything, because you'll be required to do that for the rest of your life.
I love it. That's exactly right.
Yep. And like, I mean, this perfect example, 4 years ago, I said, oh, I can help you with the co-host, Alan, and let some people in the room. And 4 years later, look at this thing. I got it locked down, right?
That's great. Tom, I call it we go back to the word curse, because I didn't make that connection, but I've identified for people, a lot of times, what I call the curse of competence. That I say that in any organization, there's one person that is the go-to person that everybody, it doesn't matter what their position is. Everybody knows that person can do everything. And so that person gets everything to do. And what I've often told those people is, like, you have to fuck something up if you want to stop. And I'll just tell you this real quick. I was behind one of those people in the Subway sandwich shop one time. And of course, I was behind her, but I was really behind 8 people, because she had the list of sandwiches and she was getting them all exactly right, how many peppers and all this other stuff. So I just decided that I don't usually cause too much trouble in Subway sandwich shops, but I just decided to help her. I explained the curse of competence to her and all the people there in the shop, and I said I can help you, ma'am. I said, if you will screw this one order up, if you will just screw it up, you will never be asked to do this again. And when they go to get sandwiches, they'll just ask you what you want. And she laughed, and the group in the Subway agreed that this was so. And of course, then she turns around and goes, okay, that's too many peppers on that one, and we need to get oil and vinegar, because it's impossible for her to not do that. And that's pain. It's a painful condition.
To tie this a little bit further to my career, we have a mix of people on our team, and I happen to be good in the financial tracking and the project tracking and management and forecasting area. And I've offered, I'll say, like, I'm going to regret offering this, but I'm good on this. Lean on me for this. But it's also out of wanting to have a hook, right, and to be confident, right, and in a little fear in kind of financial insecurity stuff. It's like, oh, like, let me push my skills in this area, so they rely on me. So it's kind of this balance.
You make your place. I mean, it's good. It's to make a living. It's good to be needed.
Yeah.
So
that not get so caught up in it, though, that that I gotta I got to nail it every time, or I got to go sell my wares to anyone who's, interested.
Absolutely.
Does someone need to believe in God to successfully overcome addiction? Well, the way I like to think about what the program does, it connects us to who we really are. And what does that mean? Well, there's this incredible force in you and I, this growth force. It's the force that moved us from crawling to walking. You wanted to take those first steps. And when you fell, and you fell a lot of times, you didn't let your failures stop you. You picked yourself up, you learned from it. And how many times did you fail before you walked? You failed as many times as you needed to. You see that force, I call it a biological imperative, a psychological imperative, a spiritual imperative. It's moving you towards wholeness. It's moving you to be what you can be. Just like in the acorn is all the information it needs to become an oak tree. In you is all the information you need to become you. Become a you that can cope with life and to deal with whatever you need to deal with to be okay. And that's what I'll talk about in my new book, The 12 Essential Insights for Emotional Sobriety.